His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Sotara Sata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Jagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Gita Govardhana ki jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Mathura Dham ki jai. Shramaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiyayat. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 18. Artha Bhavam Vinishchitya Pratishapi Natmanaha Tam Chapi Yusmach Charana Sevayaham Paranude Atavavam Vinishchyateya Vinishchitya Pratishyapi Natmanaha Tam Chapi Yusmach Charana Sevayaham Parunodi Artabhavan Minishchitya Partiyashapi Natmanaha Tam Chapi Yusmach Charana Sevayaham Paranude Artabhavam without substance. Vinishchitya, being ascertained. Pratitasya, of the apparent values. Api, also. Na, never. Atmanaha, of the self. Tam, that. Cha, also. Api, thus. Yushmat, your. Charana, feet. Sevaya, by service. Aham, myself. Paranude, shall be able to give up. Translation. But, my dear sir, I am obliged to you because now I can understand that this material manifestation is without substance, although it appears real. I am confident that by serving your feet, it will be possible for me to give up the false idea. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The sufferings of the conditioned soul are superficial and have no intrinsic value. like the cutting off of one's head in a dream. Yet although this statement is theoretically very true, it is very difficult for the common man or the neophyte on the transcendental path to realize practically. However, by serving the feet of great transcendentalists like Maitreya Muni, and by constantly associating with them, one is enabled to give up the false idea that the soul suffers from material pangs. The verse again, "But, my dear sir, I am obliged to you because now I can understand that this material manifestation is without substance, although it appears real. I am confident that by serving your feet, it will be possible for me to give up the false idea." I'm just going to digress momentarily because the previous verse is probably my favorite verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'll read the verse in English. "Both the lowest of fools and he who is transcendental to all intelligence enjoys happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs." So that's that verse. Very, very good verse. So this verse talks about the suffering of the material world being like a dream and not being real. The thing is that we have to fall in love with someone that we cannot see or talk with or eat with or play with. But we do have deities in the temple that are manifestations of the Supreme Lord. But because we don't have a personal darshan with him, we're sometimes bewildered. And it is said that this material world is like a dream, although it's very real. And if we suffer pain, it's a very, very real. But on another way of looking at things, it's unreal, because it's a sort of a dreamlike manifestation of reality. And it's been said that everything in the material world has its origin in the spiritual world. We can experience many things in the material world, but they have their origin in the spiritual world, and they're truly existing in the spiritual world. So this is just like a perversion in a sense, or a dreamlike manifestation that's not truly real, although it seems real. And as Prabhupada says, for a neophyte devotee or a conditioned soul, it's very difficult to understand. It's very difficult to have a relationship with someone you can't talk to with, someone you can't move around with, someone you can see and you can feel and you can eat with and you can play with. It's very difficult. But at the same time, we're instructed that everything in this material world has its origin in the spiritual world, and it's actually not exactly unreal, but as Prabhupada said, it's temporary. So the difference between Krishna conscious philosophy and Mayavadi philosophy is that Mayavadis have a tendency to think that the whole world is false, and that Jagan Mitra, they think that the world is false. Jagan Mitra, and only Brahman, or the spiritual world, Brahma Satya, is true. So that's a difference. Another thing about this verse is that it indicates that we have to have a living person to understand what is Krishna consciousness. So we have the Mahajans, Swayambhur, Narado, Shambhu, of whom Bali Maharaj is one of them, and Lord Shiva is one of them, and Prahlad Maharaj is one of them. So there's a combination of knowing what's true and real according to what we read and according to who we talk to. So it differentiates the Vaishnavas from the Mayavadis. Prabhupada asked us to give Srimad Bhagavatam class on a daily basis. The Bhagavatam class is an opportunity for us to hear from people who are realized, to understand things that are very difficult and almost impossible to understand. Sometimes one has to get an explanation from realized souls to see what is true and what is right. So The Mahajans, in one sense, are equally important, or even more important than what we have read. Although they never say anything that's not being written down in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and other Puranas and Hitopashyas and Ishopanishads and various other Upanishads. Of all these things, Vaishnavas, they very often quote from other Vedic literatures. And Mayavadis are fond of quoting from literature. In fact, they've even opined that people who don't study the Vedic literature are not real devotees, and that they think that Vaishnavas are sentimentalists, or they're singing and dancing because they don't have anything else to do. And Lord Chaitanya was sometimes criticized for being one of those people, even a sannyasi who doesn't read and just chants and shows ecstasy with tears in the eyes and skin like sometimes it's compared to a kadamba flower, which is a very special thing. So this is indicative of the fact that one needs a spiritual master or a guru, and as we sing every day, without the grace of the spiritual master, Vishwanath Chakravarti sings, without the grace of the spiritual master, no one can make any advancement. The point is that there has to be some persons that we look up to, who we listen to. Once Prabhupada was asked in a class, after a class in San Francisco, it was in 1967. Are you Allen Ginsberg's guru? Because Allen Ginsberg was a very famous poet, a beat poet. And Prabhupada answered by saying, I am no one's guru, I am everyone's servant. And that put an end to that questioning very smart, very quickly. So the point is that even though Yamaraj is a very highly realized soul and can read people's minds even at a great distance, he's learning from Maitreya the what's real and what's not real. So even a highly realized advanced person sometimes has to consult with others who are more advanced, or are considered more advanced, or are elevated sadhus, to know what is real and what is not real. And it's very difficult to know what is real just from reading. And therefore, Prabhupada has asked us to reciprocate by giving a Srimad Bhagavatam class. And that the Bhagavatam class is, the Bhagavatam, the book, the Bhagavatam, is quoted quite often by people like Rupa Goswami and others. Even though Prabhupada had his Diksha Guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his translations of let's take Nectar of Devotion, was translated while he was in the United States and in India. And in 1970, he said that this book, Nectar of Devotion, should be read repeatedly. And that goes for all Vedic literature. It should be read repeatedly. Not that we should ask Prabhupada, what is this, what is that, what is this, what is that? But if we go on reading, as he said in 1977, everything will become clear. So it's not just one reading, but after several readings, we can get a deeper understanding. And it's kind of like discussing things, threadbare, as Prabhupada, it was the word he used, threadbare. Discuss it threadbare and come to a deeper understanding. When I was in school, we were encouraged to discuss what we had learned, and to discuss it with other people, so that we would know what was real and what was not real, and we could come to a deeper understanding, because some things are very difficult to understand. I mean, in this previous verse I was referring to, it said that if there's everyone in this material, it's indicated that everyone in this material world is suffering. Everyone, except those who are complete idiots, who can't talk or read or write, or just they're always silent, or the Paramahansas, people who are so advanced and so realized that they don't need to talk. They just don't need to participate in anything material. So everyone is suffering except those two people. And this is a very important verse. Sometimes it's indicated that people who are insane or are considered mad don't suffer, because they just don't. And when I was in Zurich, Switzerland, I don't know if it's still existing, but there was a place called the Spritzplatz, and the government was dispensing needles and apomorphine, which is a kind of derivative of heroin. It's a more cleaner version of it, so to speak. And the interesting thing was that I was walking through this place with some other devotees early in the morning. It was about 7 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and these addicts knew Hare Krishnas, and several people said Hare Krishna to us. And we were very surprised, because they were probably ne'er-do-wells, people who either were mad or addicted to a very harmful drug. And also, when I was in Amsterdam, Holland, I don't know if it exists anymore, but there was a place. I don't know what it was called, but there was a location in that city where there were many people who were doing illegal things, mainly taking illegal drugs, and the authorities of the police just stayed away from that place. They thought it better to let people do what they have to do or what they want to do, rather than arrest them and put them in jail. So that place existed in Holland, and so in many ways, European countries are more advanced than North American countries, because instead of arresting people, they just allow them, they give them space. They give them space to do what they want to do and what they have to do and what they're addicted to doing. So these are, and as it's not indicated here, but it's said that for every bit of advancement we make in medicine and in communications and in travel, we have to suffer. It's just like I used to suffer when I was in college. We used to suffer, and we would sometimes get very intoxicated on the weekends, and then or get drunk, and then on the following weekend we would do the same thing. We would get drunk and have a hangover and just keep doing it, because that's the suffering that exists in the material world. So now there's many people that are trying to overcome this by various methods. There's different systems of living better, of feeling better, of staying alive longer. Many systems. None of them is effective. As Prabhupada was indicating, that the material world that we live in is a place of suffering, and that's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. That it's a place of suffering, of imperfectness, that we have to suffer. And even though we suffer, we do it again and again and again. So this problem of the material world seems to be an ongoing problem. When Dhruta Karma and I were doing some research for a book called Divine Nature, which was published in about 1996 by the BBT, we uncovered the substance of the reality of the food supply outstripping the population, and we learned that actually it's all false propaganda. That the population is not greater than people can eat, and there are people that believe that is true, and they're manufacturing seeds that are fruits that can't be reproduced with seeds. There's a system in India, especially in India, that people can take the seeds out of fruits and plant them and regrow fruits. But now companies are producing what they call terminator seeds, and they're seeds that don't grow, and they can't, and they're producing fruits that you can't reproduce, you can't grow again and again and again. So there's a big protest against this. And sometimes people think that by radiating foods there will be enough food for people, and not radiating foods is a symptom of not enough, of scarcity. Some people have even gone as far as to radiate food, and thinking that radiation of foods will be a way to increase the food supply. But what radiation does, and very often it causes birth defects, and sometimes people are even born with 7 fingers on one hand. I mean, that's how dangerous the concept of radiation can be. Yet it is very popular. It is becoming very popular, and people are beginning to feel that if there's going to be enough for everybody, and that there's not enough now, that they will have to be radiated. And some of the research that we found was that there's enough to feed everybody. Even if they eat meat, 10 times the population can be fed, and if they're vegetarians, 20 times the population of the earth can be fed. And there's an apparent restriction, apparent shortage of food because Mother Earth is a human being, Mother Bhumi. And as soon as there's a lot of sinful activity on the face of the earth, the supply of food and everything is restricted, very much so that people suffer. We're treated to a lot of propaganda about people not having enough food, how they're getting sick and they're getting bloated and they're not living, they're dying in childbirth or they're dying very young. But all this is false propaganda, so that we will be charitable and give food to the needy, but they're not really needy. It's just that there's a lot of greed, and I think it was Gandhi who said that the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Yeah, it was Gandhi that said that, Mahatma Gandhi, or probably called him Mohandas Gandhi, because he's actually not a Mahatma. A Mahatma is a highly advanced, realized soul. So the point is that if there's a lot of sin in the world, Mother Bhumi restricts the supply, and artificial shortages are created. So sometimes, like countries like the United States and Canada and England have apparently a lot of the things that they can use, like food and because of advances in the way of life, seeming advances, people are complacent. They don't think that there's any problem that we'll somehow or other we'll manage. And in one case, there was a person. This was in about 1968 or 69. It was 1970, 71, actually 71, I think. There was a person who came to meet Prabhupada and said that we're running out of oil. We're running out of fuel. The world is running out of fuel. Is this true? And then Prabhupada gave the example of an airplane, and he said, and if an airplane runs out of petrol or gasoline, it falls down. Isn't that correct? And this person who was, I think he was the Marquis of somebody who was very important in British life, had to admit that was true, that if the airplane runs out of fuel, of course it's going to fall down. And then the indication was that the Earth will fall from its orbit if it runs out of petroleum. And Prabhupada was kind of like sanctioning this idea that the world is running out of petroleum. That's why they're finding it in the bottoms of the ocean, and they're putting up these stations to extract coal, iron, and oil, especially oil, from the seabed, from the base of the sea. So these things are all happening. So does anyone have any questions or comments about this verse or the previous one? I'm going to read this verse and the previous one again, because they're nice verses. Both the lowest of fools and he who is transcendental to all intelligence enjoys happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs. And the verse that we're reading today is, "But, my dear sir, I am obliged to you because now I can understand that this material manifestation is without substance. Although it appears real, I am confident that by asserting your feet, it will be possible for me to give up the false idea." So here it's being said that the material world is actually false, or our idea of what is real is not actually real. But the understanding by Yamaraj from Maitreya is that all things in this material world are not only sometimes seen as being unreal, but are temporary. And so that's the So if you have any comments or questions about any of these verses, please ask. Otherwise, we'll stop. Yes?
A little question, but thank you, Maharaj. I'm always concerned about the earth, that they keep sucking things out of her, like as you said, the coal and the oil and things. I mean, is that going to cause a lot of catastrophes?
Well, according to modern material thinking, it's already causing a catastrophe. There's not enough oil, there's not enough food, and we're running out. But Prabhupada has told us that this is actually false propaganda. There's actually enough for everyone. In our research, we found that the present population of the Earth, this was in 1996, it's not very different now, but they could also fit inside of the country of France, and everyone would have 100 square feet to live in, or you know. So it's just false propaganda that we're running out. It's just the fact that we're engaged in sinful activity, and because we're engaged in sinful activity, the earth is restricting the supplies. So that's the spiritual understanding, not that we're just draining we're detonating atomic bombs underground and so on and so forth. And there's many people that are committing suicide actually because they can't plant the seeds that are within fruits to grow other trees and other fruits. So there's over 100 people commit suicide every year, farmers, because they can't regenerate what their livelihood is. They can't use fruits to make more fruits. So it's not just a question of we're running out, but people are engaged in sinful activities. They're irradiating food. They're taking all kinds of intoxicants, and they're doing all kinds of things that are causing restrictions. And they're saying that the restriction is our doing, but the restriction is because people are greedy. They want more petrol. They want more food. There's many institutions that say that we should have more and more and more and more, but a realized person doesn't want more. A realized person can exist with very little sleep, with very little food. Like the Goswamis were said to have maybe 2 hours or 1 hour of sleep a night because they were so enthusiastic to preach Krishna consciousness or to write the many books that they wrote. Prabhupada said that we should read everything that they wrote. Of course, now it's a little difficult because many of the translators, probably most of the translators, are impersonalists, and they provide translations that are ununderstandable or are wrong. So that's part of what's going on in the material world. So we're not part of this material world, in a sense. People think that the Krishna consciousness movement is not real. And they accuse devotees of being escapists sometimes, but actually they are realists. So that's my answer to that question. Any others? I think we're going to have to stop now. I have one other? No? Yes? Yes, no. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. It was just a comment. I was listening to a class by Srila Prabhupada this morning, and he was saying that the fact that we don't appreciate that whatever we're getting in this material nature comes from the demigods and ultimately from Krishna means that we're stealing. And that stealing mentality is what causes the lack of abundance. And he was saying that we obviously don't need to individually thank each and every demigod, because by chanting Hare Krishna, we're appreciating all of them. But I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
It's a good comment. Actually, according to what Prabhupada has said, even though there's poverty in some parts of the world, the real reason for this poverty is that we think we need a lot more things. We need faster cars, we need better airplanes, all that. That is the main reason why there's poverty in some parts of the world, because people they're forced into poverty by the so-called have nations. Nations that have a lot of food, and the United States has so much food. In earlier, I don't know if it's still doing it, but in earlier times, it was advising farmers to deposit their grain into the ocean to get rid of it, to keep the prices high. So that's the difference. There are very wealthy and full-on people and countries, and there are others that are suffering because there's too much greed in the world. People think they need more things and they don't. Just like sadhus, they can live with very little food and very little sleep because they're enthusiastic about Krishna consciousness. So in the spiritual world, there's no shortage. Only in the material world, and the shortage in the material world is not a true shortage. It's just an apparent shortage. Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.